Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. I don't know what it was, a couple months ago, we did a video on Sofia, Bulgaria versus Belgrade, Serbia as places to live and visit. And it got lots of different opinions and controversy. Some people are very sensitive about where they live, although I thought I was trying to be very objective. But anyway, figured I would do another video along that vein, covering another country that is similar, another city that is similar, and kind of also in the popularity. So today we're going to talk about Sofia, Bulgaria versus Tbilisi, Georgia. What are they like to visit and live in, and what might you want to consider? So we're going to dive in. Before we get started, smash the subscribe button. If you haven't done so already, click the notification bell to be notified of our upcoming videos. Try to share with you great stuff. If you like the video at the end, please click the like button. If you want some assistance with us, you can book a call with me, cordia.fm/Michael Rosmer. It's a link below, or check out our websites. Okay, so I think these are interesting cities to compare, just like Belgrade and Sofia were interesting cities to compare. Sofia and Tbilisi are interesting to compare because they're quite similar. Now, caveat right off the bat is I have visited Tbilisi on a number of occasions. I've spent a bunch of time there. Fairly extended periods of time there. We've done some business there, etc. I have friends there. I have not long-term lived in Tbilisi, so my perspective on it is a little bit different than the perspective on Sofia, Bulgaria, where I have spent quite a bit of time and been resident for a reasonable period of time, etc. But I'll kind of weigh in on, having been to both places, having spent a bunch of time in both places, what it is that drove my decision-making process, and what might drive your decision-making process, and things that I like about both, and so on and so forth. So let's just start from the standpoint of tourism. I'll probably offend a bunch of Bulgarians here because they tend to be very sensitive about their country, but I actually think that Tbilisi is a cooler place to visit as a tourist than Sofia is. You can debate it all you like. To me, just like the visual appearance of Tbilisi, very few people know much about Georgia. It's kind of out there. It's a little bit more removed. It's more different. It is a city that is quite different. It's quite unique. I don't think I've really been to any place quite like Tbilisi before. Now, I maybe could say that about Sofia too, but in a different sort of way. So let me kind of paint for you the picture of what these cities are like. So Sofia is very flat at the base of Mount Vitosha. Okay, so that's cool. You have access to Vitosha. You can go hiking there. People go doing things like doing motocross there. A bunch of different activities. And one of the cool things I think about the Sofia culture is that I would say it's fairly active. People are into a bunch of these outdoor activities. There's quite a bit of in the surrounding area, mountains and things like that. Very few people come to Sofia as a tourist destination. Usually they're using it as where they're coming into, and then they're going to things around there, and that's cool, right? You can go and check that out. Now, by contrast, Tbilisi is in this valley. Okay, so you've got kind of this mountain up on the one side, and you've got kind of this hill on the other side, and then you've got a river that flows down the center. And there's lots of cool stuff around this river, as well as stuff kind of up on both hills. So on the one hill, you've got this nice church that you can see from all across the city. It's lit up at night. It's very cool. Up on the top of this mountain, you have this kind of amusement park, Ferris wheel. You've got this cable car that goes up the mountain, or you can drive up. It's quite a long drive, but it's cool. You can go up there. There's a nice restaurant. You can look out over the city. I think that the view is much more cool in Tbilisi, just the geography, the buildings, the architecture, what's going on. I think it's much cooler myself. Now, that being said, there are some places, if you go up kind of to low on the base of Mount Vitosha and look over Sofia, you get a reasonable view. Or there's a new Millennium Tower downtown, which has quite a nice view. There used to be a place called The View. They closed that up. And there's a restaurant called Panorama in Hotel Marinella that you can get a view. I find that the view of Sofia during the day is not particularly good. At night it's better, but the cool thing is there's lots of parks. So, just in this sense of the aesthetic of what you're gonna see, there's also kind of this little castle thing going up part of the mountain in Tbilisi. And I just think that Tbilisi is like a cooler city in terms of how it looks. Some people might disagree with me. I don't know. I find that hard to understand how you would not think that, because it's kind of, it's pretty unique. It's pretty cool. I don't know. There's just like something about how this is laid out that is pretty interesting, and I think it makes a unique place to visit for tourism. Another thing that kind of goes along with the tourism, but actually goes along with living there as well, is I love Georgian wine. I think Georgia is, some of the most amazing place for wine, and equally one of the least talked about, underrated places for wine. Like, people talk about French wine. I like Argentinian Malbecs. They'll have Italian wine. They'll have wine from Napa Valley, etc. I would choose Georgian wine over all of those, like pretty much all the time. There's some Sicilian wines and a few Spanish wines that I like. Again, like I said, Argentinian Malbecs tend to be to my taste. I'm not going to say that they're good because I'm far from a wine connoisseur, but I just know what I like, right? But there are just like some amazing wines. Now, Georgia is the place that wine basically came from 8,000 years ago. It was like the earliest cradle of wine. So that's really cool, right? So yeah, that's like, to me, pretty awesome about Tbilisi. So I think, yeah, just now let's kind of go and look at kind of, again, things that I find kind of weird about it, because I described this. I described, a friend of mine was involved in the government of Georgia for a number of years, and very connected and stuff. And so I told him, I was like, to me, this is kind of the comment, and I get kickback on this. I don't know quite why people dislike this, but I say, to me, when I visit Tbilisi, I'm like, it's almost as though Singapore and Syria had a child. And it was funny because I mentioned this to him, and he said, oh, it's interesting because they actually modeled some of their policies when they were going through their anti-corruption regime, et cetera, after Singapore. Now, the people who dislike Georgia and like Singapore will push back on me. They're like, it is nothing like Singapore. It's like, well, that's why I said it's mixed with Syria. It's you can't. If you are thinking Singapore and you go to Georgia, you're going to be you're not going to. It's a mismatch. It's not how it is. But what I am saying when I say that is there are some things which are very modern, which work incredibly well. You've got kind of this Millennium Bridge with all this glass thing. You can go and see the Radisson Blu Hotel, which has a casino in it, kind of this modern building. Like, there's a number of these like nice modern buildings. Then there's kind of some old buildings, and then there's just like some junky communist buildings there. So that's why I'm saying, like, there's like this Syrian, like, you would think, okay, everything's falling apart, it's not so nice, etc. But then there's like some really nice stuff next to it, and it's kind of this, I don't know, like I don't want to say schizophrenic. That's not really the right idea, but it's just like, it's a unique combination that I think is pretty cool. It makes for this interesting environment. By contrast, Sofia doesn't have too much in the way of these. Well, it tends to have less of the, like, okay, you have Alexander Nevsky Cathedral. So, okay, that's like a nice old building, things like that, which, I guess kind of similar to the cathedral that you have at the top of the hill in Tbilisi. There isn't really castles or anything in Sofia. There's some old ruins and things like that, so you can go and see that. I would say that, like, there's a lot less to see in that respect inside Sofia, even though there is quite a bit of history there. It's like history that's kind of like buried beneath the surface. And Sofia was quite a small city for, Georgia, or Tbilisi, I guess, was not a huge city for most of history either. But anyway, to me, it's just like, it's more diverse. There's more to like see in Tbilisi than there is in Georgia, or in Sofia, sorry. So that's one side of it. As I said, I think that, it's hard to underrate the Georgian wine culture. I think is great. On the flip side, Georgia is way worse connected than Sofia. So this was a big factor in my decision of where to go. I could have easily, had been resident in either place. But for somebody who wants to like travel and see different places, it's improved over the years. Interestingly, a lot of the new flight connections go to Kutaisi, or west of Batumi, but Kutaisi more. So, okay, you could take a car and drive from Tbilisi through to Kutaisi and take a flight and have some connections. The connections are just not amazing. Like, people will be like, oh, hey, well, you can go to London, and from London you can go anywhere. It's like, yeah, well, lots of the time I don't want to go to London, right? Like, the idea is, if I'm in Sofia, now again, Corona being aside, there's just like a lot of direct flights. You know, you have Wizz Air that can connect you. Like I want to go to Malaga, you know, I can go there directly, right? I want to go just like tons of places I can go directly from Sofia. If I want to go to Asia, there's lots of deals with Qatar Airways to go via Qatar to Asia. They give you, you know, Qatar has just like amazing business class. If you haven't done it, Q Suite's fantastic. You should definitely try it. Maybe not so much during Corona, again, kind of with these restrictions, but it's great. So you have that environment, which is really good. And Georgia's it just doesn't compare. Okay, it's just not on the same level. And so that's like a much worse thing that for me factors into the process. Let's look at kind of some other things. I think that like the food culture and the hospitality, I would say that hospitality is probably a little better in Georgia. The food culture, I mean, they both are kind of like, they have good mid-range cuisine is what kind of or good and like for a good price, right? Like the costs in both places are similar, right? They're like in a reasonably similar ballpark. You're not going to spend a fortune in either one. What you're going to be able to get, you can get some like decent stuff for that. Cool, great. Like they both, I think, measure up. I don't know. I guess personal preferences, but I would maybe prefer, and you know, I've had the benefit of being shown around by some wonderfully welcoming Georgians who have taken me to some great places and things like this. So I might prefer the traditional Georgian cuisine to traditional Bulgarian cuisine, but that's personal preference. Things like sushi, you have better access in Sofia for sure. There is not really very good options in Georgia, at least not any of the times that I've been there. I haven't been able to find it. So I would say that like for diverse cuisine, it's a little bit better in Sofia than in Georgia. Sofia is a much more convenient city. Just getting around in Sofia, like if you want to, you can walk a lot of places, especially if you live in Lozenets, if you live in Doctor's Garden, if you live in Ivan Vazov, if you like in this kind of like halo of downtown, your ability to walk a lot of places is really good in Sofia. You can jump onto the metro if you wanted to and go places easily and cheaply. Taxis are super accessible and traffic is like virtually non-existent. It's people who complain about traffic in Sofia have just been nowhere. Like if you go to like any major city, if you go to New York, if you go to LA, if you go to Bali, if you go to Thailand, you know, like the traffic is just so much worse in those places that like you really have great traffic in Sofia. The same I would say is not true in Georgia. In Tbilisi, like yes, taxis are cheap. Yeah, you have good apps, you can access them, etc. But you could easily get stuck much worse in traffic there. I would say walking around is less accessible, in part just because it's hilly, right? Like the difference between flat and not flat, big difference. I remember the first time that I arrived there, I went to this hotel, and so I was staying at this hotel, great. I got up the next day and I tried walking I was going to a bank, and oh boy, like, you know, it was a little bit challenging to kind of like navigate through and around. I probably should have taken a taxi. I don't remember why I didn't, but anyway, maybe to explore or whatever. But definitely not as easy a walking experience, that's for sure. Just not at the availability. You know, you don't have the metro system to get you around. And the roads and the way that the roads and traffic work in Tbilisi is definitely not a thing that works particularly. This is like one of the Syrian sides. It's not as bad as when I'm in Egypt, but in places in Egypt, you'll have just like total chaos, right? You're in Alexandria or something, and you're just like, what is going on here? It's not bad like that, but I swear pretty much every single vehicle that I see in Georgia has damage on it. Like, I would not want to have an expensive car at all in Georgia. It sounds like a horrible idea because it just seems like everything gets damaged. Like that traffic system is not something that works well in Georgia. By contrast, I mean, there's so many nice cars in Sofia, and yeah, it's just much more convenient for getting around. So that's like an advantage of Sofia over Tbilisi. And in general, this is like, again, kind of, you can start to see things that play out for me as important values. So let's go now talk about infrastructure. Internet, etc. Like just in general, I would say infrastructure is much better in Sofia than it is in Tbilisi. The quality of your internet is definitely better. You can have a SIM card which works anywhere in the EU. You know, that's fantastic. It's super cheap in Tbilisi. You can go and, you know, you can land in the airport and you can buy a SIM card for cheap and have access and all that kind of stuff. It's just not going to be the same speeds. It's not going to be the same goodness, and then it's not going to roam throughout the EU. So, you know, in that sense, it's just better in Sofia. You get very good infrastructure for doing work and e-commerce and online stuff, etc. It's good. So that's kind of a contrast for you. In terms of things like their tax structure, their tax system and setting things up, etc., this is an interesting one. So the headline tax rate is lower in Bulgaria than it is in Georgia. Georgia has kind of a territorial tax system, which is, it's not fully territorial, but you know, they've got kind of this thing going on which is better. Georgia has something where they, now it's a recent thing, they only tax distributions, not profits. That's kind of cool. There are some special types of companies you can get which are very favorable. I really like Georgia's tax system. Like, I think Georgia has one of the, there's like a few countries that have really smart, well-constructed tax systems in terms of like how it positions them internationally. Georgia is one of them. Estonia is arguably one of them. Malta is one of them. There's a few places like this that they're just really smart. Now, how it actually plays out in real life is different. So, for example, Malta on paper is really cool. In practice, the bureaucracy, et cetera, of Malta makes it not so good. So here we're like, all right, whatever. You know, it's super easy to form companies in Georgia, easier than it is in Bulgaria for sure. In Bulgaria, it's not hard. Like, it's relatively easy to do business, but you have this capital account thing that you have to give, which is absolutely insane. Why you would do that, I don't know. So that's like a little bit weird. And in Georgia, like, they just have this fantastic, you can go to like this head place. I think I filmed some video. I don't know if I posted them, but I filmed some videos in this big hall where you can do like everything, right? Registering your marriages, registering your companies, whatever. It's like, it's a pretty cool system. Like, they've built these electronic systems that eliminate bureaucracy. They're fantastic in Georgia, far, far better than in Bulgaria, although Bulgaria manages to work pretty well, all things considered. So in terms of like setting that up now, to form a company, you need power of attorney in both countries, which is kind of weird to me. You just compare, like, I think about Canada, the US, UK, Hong Kong, where you don't need any of that stuff. So I don't quite understand this need for this power of attorney thing. But anyway, you need it in both places. The thing that I think works out a little bit better here in Bulgaria is that in Bulgaria, typically you'll have English and foreign versions of the documents, whereas you end up with like this Georgian only. I mean, it depends, but often like a Georgian version of a power of attorney. And Georgian is one of the very few alphabets in the world. There's, I think, only like 14 alphabets in the world, and it's one of only, so it corresponds to nothing, right? It's the only country in the world that uses that alphabet. It's a small country, you know, similar size to Bulgaria, actually, in terms of population. So that's why, again, these are kind of interesting to compare. Likewise, by the way, the population of Tbilisi and Sofia are similar, right? You're like a little over 1 million people, so kind of similar dynamics in that sense. In terms of something like nightlife, I don't know, like, maybe I would give the edge a little bit to Sofia, but, you know, not dramatically so. I think that there's like quite a bit of cultural richness. Like, a lot of people are liking, it's kind of like this up and coming place in Georgia. So in that sense, again, like, I think as a tourist, it's cooler to visit Georgia than it is to visit Sofia, or cooler to visit Tbilisi than it is to visit Sofia. Whether it's cooler to visit Georgia than Bulgaria, that's like a little bit more of a debate, right? There's, I would say, the seaside, you have a little better setup in terms of Bulgaria than you do in terms of Georgia. They're very similar, right? Very similar countries. I don't know. It's tough to contrast in that regard. There was a crazy video, if you want to go and check out on YouTube, of the Georgian. It's a ski hill, and the chairlift goes crazy, starts throwing people off. So there's inexpensive skiing in both Georgia and in Bulgaria. So these are both options that a person can take a look at if they're interested in that. Let's see here. What else have we got? So we've gone through food. Cost of living is kind of similar. Like I said, connection convenience is better in Sofia. Infrastructure is better in Sofia, but bureaucracy is lower in Georgia. I would say that English is not great in either of these places. I don't know, like how this would work out. Maybe it's slightly better in Bulgaria, but tough to say. Yeah, that's like, you know, if you're going to try and navigate that way, I don't know. It's like I said, I think that to me, I've had a little bit better hospitality experience in Georgia. That might be because of the friends that I have there. So that is, you know, it can be taken a little bit with a grain of salt, I guess. It's very Russian friendly in Georgia. So maybe that's part of why English is maybe a little bit worse in Georgia as compared with Bulgaria. If you want to run a business there, I mean, access to talent in both of these places, I mean, they're just like, they're small labor markets, you know? I would say that I haven't been super excited about hiring people in Georgia. I'm not super excited about hiring people in Bulgaria either. But yeah, I don't know. Like they're no. I wouldn't really recommend either of these as great places to hire people. They're yeah, like you have just like the nature of the talent markets is not really optimal, and they haven't highly invested in say great skills for IT, etc. So they aren't like really IT hubs. Neither of them are good capital hubs. The banking used to be dramatically better in Georgia, and now banking in Georgia has gotten way harder. So I did a video on why I no longer really tend to bank much at all in Georgia. So not really such a big fan of that. Yeah, like they're very similar places in many regards, so they're interesting to compare, but yet they're actually quite different. So for me, the defining factors were convenience and infrastructure. I think were like the two things that really caused me to choose Bulgaria over Georgia. Georgia's farther removed, it's harder to fly in and out of, it's more inconvenient to get around in. So it's got a bunch of really cool things, right? There's kind of this, like I said, there's this wine culture, there's a nice hospitality culture. It's, although there's things that like really are broken down and, you know, like I said, kind of like it's this mishmash where you've got some really nice things and some really not so nice things. Sofia is, I guess, less, I don't know, maybe what you'd call it bipolar or something like that. It's more consistent in that regard. Yeah, so it's a total, like, I'd love to hear from you guys what you think. If you've been to both places, which do you prefer? Why do you prefer them? For me, like I said, I would give the edge just on the city. So we're not talking about the country, the city itself. I would give the edge as a tourist to Tbilisi as a place to visit, and as a place to live, I would give the edge to Bulgaria. That being said, there's also other considerations you might have, such as if you're from the EU, it is especially easy to become a resident in Bulgaria, whereas it's not as easy in Georgia because it's not part of the EU. The path to citizenship, I mean, you're going to get an EU citizenship in Bulgaria, so I think that kind of makes it a no-brainer compared to the path to citizenship in Georgia. That being said, it's a faster path to citizenship, or has been traditionally, in Bulgaria than it has been in Georgia than it has been in Bulgaria. However, they have recently gotten much more strict about language tests in Georgia, and I don't know that a person would want to learn Georgian. I mean, a lot of people probably don't want to learn Bulgarian as is, but I mean, if you were just to compare, let's say that somebody comes from, say, Serbia, you know, there's quite a bit of an overlap between Bulgarian and Serbian. Bulgaria uses Cyrillic for the alphabet, which Serbia also uses Cyrillic, and so you kind of get this thing. Whereas in Georgia, you'd have to learn a totally different alphabet, right? So anyway, take it for what it is. That would be kind of my like summary of it. There's probably a couple things that I've missed in there, but the real estate prices are kind of similar. I suspect that the investment opportunities, I mean, I don't know. I guess there's more room to expand in Sofia. So from a geography standpoint, I'd probably prefer Georgia. They've both, I think, gotten kind of expensive over the last little while compared to what they were, you know, 6 years ago. If you were to like be in either of them 5-6 years ago, I think they were pretty reasonable buys. And today, I mean, prices have gone up a lot. So anyway, tell me what you guys think in the comments. If you're interested, like, I really encourage you to go to both of them. I think that, you know, I'm all about seeing like diversity or variety is the spice of life. Go and check out different places. But if I was going to relocate, I mean, I literally did choose to do long-term residency in Bulgaria versus, in particular in Sofia, compared to Tbilisi. And but as a place to visit, I think that I would more recommend people to go to Tbilisi. So personal preferences. If you think otherwise, definitely let me know in the comments. Tell me which one is better for you. And I'm gonna, well, if you haven't done so already, please click the subscribe button. Tell us what you think. Click the like button. Share with your friends if you want some advice about, where to move, residencies, citizenships, etc. Please reach out to me, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. There's a link below, or check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. I'm going to see you guys on the next video.